the tendering process is flawed.
Staying on track, Katera stands his ground as railway tender probe begins.
Westgate terror trials begin, but where are the real attackers?
Tumeona tone la damu, tukafuata lile tone la damu mpaka likatuelekeza kwa boma hii.
Also tonight, a bizarre murder and why the corpse was kept in a house for 5 days.
Good evening from the Standard Group Center here in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. You're just in time for your most qualified news bulletin in town, KTN.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us this 15th of January. We're halfway through the month already. I'm very glad you could join us this evening. Now we begin tonight with what could be another milestone in Kenya's quest to become an oil giant.
The company prospecting for oil in Turkana says it has discovered yet another well that now puts the total estimate of discovered oil resources in Kenya to over 600 million barrels.
Now analysts say that on full assessment that could even rise to more than 1 billion barrels of oil.
KTN's Bonnie Tunya is here with us in studio and has those details. Bonnie, how significant is this new find?
It is indeed very significant. A billion barrel means like that we are higher than Sudan in production, higher than Uganda. So, I mean, we are chasing after the likes of Angola and Nigeria. So this is big news. But let's take a look at exactly what Talo announced today. The big news from Turkana has now triggered plans between the Kenyan government and Talo Oil for the development of an oil export pipeline within the next 2 years. In the Wednesday announcement, the British oil explorer has made the new oil discoveries at the Amosing 1 and Ewoi 1 exploration wells in Block 10BB onshore northern Kenya. Talo says the Amosing 1 well has intersected net oil pay of between 160 and 200 meters, significantly exceeding Talo's pre-drill expectations, while the Ewoi 1 well has encountered net pay of 20 to 80 meters. And while Kenya's oil find has been certified as being commercially viable, the blessing has come with its set of challenges like transportation and storage of this vital resource. Kenya lacks a modern pipeline system and a refinery that meets international standards. Analysts point to a difficult balancing act in regards to management of the resource in respect to the new devolved system of government. A case in point was late last year when community leaders in Turkana protested at what they saw as the exclusion in the exploitation of the oil. For now though, Talo says drilling work has commenced in some wells with a complete assessment of the entire northern basin set to put Kenya's resource at 1 billion barrels. Bonnie Tunya, KTN. Right, so that's what they announced. And I bet the question in the minds of many Kenyans is, so what? When exactly are we going to start bathing in oil money? And I talked to a few of my friends at the Petroleum Institute, and here is how, and here is how long it will take. Well, basically it starts with prospecting. This, simply put, is looking for the material. Now this period is unspecified, right? At that particular point, experts go out, look out for this material, and this is based on research. After the prospecting and they say, hey, maybe we have something, the next step is exploration. Now this takes 2 to 3 years. Exploration basically checks on the commercial viability of this particular find, and in this particular area they look at 4 key things. This will be quality. Is the find good enough? The next would be quantity. How much do we have it? And the next would be technology. What technology exactly are we going to use to extract this content? And finally, of course, it's cost, to check if indeed there is really worth your time. And after that is the final step, which is indeed the longest. This is commercial production. As at now, Talo has not started commercial production. Now, this is a process that takes about 5 to 6 years, and basically we are extracting it from the ground, putting it in the pipelines, putting it in the containers, and taking it to the people who indeed buy, and that is when we start to buy. So Nancy, Ben, we're talking about 9 to 10 years before we can start earning from oil.
9 to 10 years.
9 to 10 years. So I mean,
Kenyans, so not just yet.
Not just yet. We're still doing analyses, assessments. 9 to 10 years is safe.
Okay.
Right.
And where do you think the pipeline versus railway discussion is going to end up?
For the oil deal, I think it's pretty set. We're talking about LAPSET. That's the whole arrangement it's going to look at. But of course, there has been discussion that for East Africa, I mean, Sudan has oil, Uganda has oil, Kenya has oil. So probably it's time to put up a modern refinery in East Africa. But again, we're talking about mass transportation, so railway comes into play. It's going to make it cheaper as compared to, say, talking about transporting tons of oil on road. So, I mean, railway is a good deal for this. We're not going to get into standard gauge railway debate, but then that is a good option for anyone willing to invest.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Bonnie. All right, well, let's now go to the International Criminal Court, which has granted Deputy President William Ruto excusal from continuous attendance of his trial.
While delivering the oral ruling, presiding judge Eboy Osuji stated that the excusal comes with a number of conditions the deputy president must observe.
That's right. The court directed that Ruto should attend the court proceedings for at least 3 days starting Monday, when President Uhuru Kenyatta will be back in the country from his Angola trip.
Here's the decision made after the 3-hour proceedings today.
The chamber hereby conditionally excuses Mr. Ruto from continuous presence at trial on the following conditions. Mr. Ruto must be physically present in the courtroom for the following hearings. 1. The entirety of the closing statements of all parties and participants in the case. 2. When victims present their views and concerns in person. 3. The entirety of the delivery of the judgment in the case. 4. The entirety of the sentencing hearing, if applicable. 5. The entirety of the sentencing, if applicable. 6. The entirety of the victim impact hearings, if applicable. 7. The entirety of the reparation hearings, if applicable. 7. The first 5 days of hearing starting after a judicial recess.
So there you have it. The ICC trial judges have just granted William Ruto's request to be excused from physically attending his trial at the ICC. That brings us to our big question tonight. We're asking you, do you support this decision to actually excuse him from having to be present at the ICC during his case?
Please tell us what you think about this latest development on the ICC trials. SMS your yes or no opinion, plus a brief comment to the number 22155. You can also tweet us at Ben_Kitili, at Kachungira, and at KTN. We shall be sampling these views and also giving you the poll results at the tail end of this live newscast.
Now, Bonnie Tunya did talk about the railway controversy, and he didn't want to go there, but we're going to go there anyway. Now, it has emerged earlier today that the man who started the storm got his chance to explain his allegations before a parliamentary committee. Alfred Katera of Nandi Hills now claims that President Uhuru Kenyatta was duped into signing the railway deal before it could go through the normal scrutiny for such contracts. And as Aaron Ocheng now reports, the legislator says he will be ready to present what he calls hard evidence next week.
China Road and Bridge Corporation, the Chinese company awarded the contract to build the controversial standard gauge railway, only conducted a feasibility study for 485 kilometers of the railway, but ended up receiving a 609 kilometers construction tender from Mombasa to Nairobi. This is according to Nandi Hills Member of Parliament Alfred Keter.
You cannot have the same contractor giving you the history of a feasibility study, the design, costing, bill of quantities, then you are giving the same contractor the contract. It does not happen anywhere in the world.
The MP asked for one more week to officially table his evidence to prove his allegations that the procurement process for the controversial standard gauge railway was flawed. He maintains that Kenyans will pay more after the contract was single-sourced.
What is the cost of building a railway per kilometer? What is the cost of building an electric rail from Mombasa to Nairobi? Then we will weigh and see. And people who are telling us the Chinese engage in government to government are lying to us.
The Chinese firm got the contract to build the first phase of the railway at 220 billion shillings, but it was later expanded to 325 billion shillings to allow it to source for locomotives and wagons as well. Keter, who appeared before the Parliamentary Public Investment Committee, opened fresh attacks on the tendering process, saying that the President was misled into launching the project before due diligence was done.
Why are you treating this case as a special case? Because people want to eat the money. And they are telling us it is money that we got from China. It is not just money that we got. Tell us, there are money that you can get as a grant. There are money that you can get on a loan without interest. Then there is money that you can get loan plus interest.
Keter says he will not appear before the Transport Committee, which is conducting a parallel inquiry into the same project, on grounds that the chairman of the committee, Maina Kamanda, had already shown in public that he was not impartial. He told the committee that Ethiopia was constructing a double-track railway at $3.9 million per kilometer, yet Kenya was doing a single track for almost the same amount of money. Others expected to be questioned by PIC over the railway tender include the Managing Director of the Public Procurement Oversight Authority, the Attorney General, and top management of the Kenya Railway Corporation. Aaron Ochin, KTN.
Thanks, Aaron. Now to yet another search for the truth, and this one is about Kenya's worst terrorist attack since 1998. That is the Westgate siege. Earlier today, the trial began of 4 suspects charged with involvement in that attack that claimed nearly 70 lives. The first 2 witnesses, 2 security guards, related the chain of events that saw gunmen open fire on shoppers at the mall. KTN's Wilkiston Naba reports on the trial that began amid many pending questions about the horror incident.
Armed officers along the corridors gave the first clue of the goings-on at the Milimani law courts. They stood guard as 4 suspects were led to the courtroom. The 4, Mohammed Ahmed Abdi, Liban Abdallah Omar, Hussein Hassan and Aidan Mohammed Ibrahim, were charged in connection with the attack on the Westgate Mall. They pleaded not guilty. This the first day of their trial. The first witness, Stephen Juma, was a security guard at the Westgate Mall for 5 years. On the day of the attack, he was patrolling the front entrance of the mall. He told the court he saw 3 armed men jump out and open fire on a shopper. He then abandoned his post and fled to call for reinforcements. Juma claimed the suspects had covered their faces. Patrick Wane then took the stand. Patrick, also a security guard, was manning the main gate at the Westgate shopping mall. He told the court that he saw 2 men shooting at shoppers. They were both wearing dark glasses, meaning he too could not identify them. The Somali rebel militia group Al-Shabaab took credit for the attack. Police officers and experts who undertook investigations claimed that the 4 gunmen who staged the siege died in the attack, an assertion that has been widely disputed. The 4 suspects are now accused not of perpetrating the attack, but of aiding those who planned and executed an attack that saw at least 67 people lose their lives after gunmen opened fire on shoppers at the shopping mall. 33 security guards were on duty when the Westgate shopping mall came under attack, and a section are expected to testify as the trial of the 4 suspects continues. But even as the trial goes on, Kenyans have been left guessing when the government intends to institute its own probe on the chaotic handling of the Westgate rescue. The aftermath of the attack left a deluge of whispered accusations and counter-accusations between the police and the military of messed up operations and possible deaths from friendly fire. The country is still also waiting to hear what became of the so-called DNA testing on bodies retrieved from the scene after reports that the bodies of the terrorists seen on Westgate's CCTV cameras could not be traced. The two witnesses, both security guards at the Westgate shopping mall, told the court that although they spotted the attackers on the day of the attack, they could not positively identify them. They are the first two of 40 witnesses set to appear in court as the case continues. Wilkeston Abwa, KTN in Nairobi.
Thank you, Wilkester. Now, in South Sudan, the vicious civil war has been going on for exactly 1 month today as hopes of a ceasefire continue to fade. Negotiators are still deadlocked over venue and rebel demands for the release of prisoners held by the army. Military officials say they are battling rebels in the oil-rich town of Malakal. And as KTN's Angel Katusia now tells us, the impacts of that war are reaching far and wide.
John Owana is only a week old here in Eldoret. He fled his home in Jonglei in Sudan as fighting between government troops and rebels intensified. He is one of the over 200,000 people displaced by the crisis in South Sudan, but he is lucky to have landed in a safe haven, Kenya.
They slaughtered 2 people, and at night at 2 o'clock, people were dispersed because of the shooting. So we ran to several places before we were rescued. And since then, what I've seen when I came back to the city of Madingbor, a lot of people were lying down dead.
When the fighting erupted exactly a month ago, leaving the world's youngest nation on the brink of a full-scale civil war, normal life for John was cut short instantly.
The jobs were there and everything was running well. But now we are dispersed. We don't know where to begin. The few people who are learning there now have been disrupted. Even the students, I don't know where they are. Even the parents and the kids are lying down under the trees. There's no food, no anything.
But it is not just the South Sudanese in the war-torn country that got affected. For many South Sudan citizens living in Kenya, the turmoil back at home had an almost immediate effect on them.
There are some people I know who are in school last year, and currently they are not in school, and it is because of the war that is going on. So the only source of money that they were in school was those who are employed in South Sudan.
Despite peace talks underway in Ethiopia, government forces and rebels in South Sudan continued fighting for control of key oil-producing venues, driving more people to flee their homes to escape the deadly clashes. Negotiations have had several hiccups, and so far no concrete agreement has been reached on. According to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, about 413,000 people are internally displaced and 66,500 are seeking refuge at United Nations bases around the country. More than 74,300 have already fled the country, with dozens arriving daily in neighboring Uganda and Kenya. The fighting broke out on December 15th after President Salva Kiir accused his former Vice President Riek Machar of an attempted coup. But for Sudanese living in or out of South Sudan, the cost of war is a load that they'll rather put down sooner rather than later. Angel Gatusia, KTN.
According to the UN numbers, more than 400,000 people have been displaced. We are keeping an eye on that developing story. Back into the country and into the county of Nakuru, Naivasha is once again making headlines, and as usual for all the wrong reasons. It is alleged that a man killed his teenage brother before setting the body ablaze and subsequently hiding the remains in his house for 5 days. Here's more on that story.
Area residents stood watching in shock as news of the murder spread in Kayole village of Naivasha. Residents are alleging that a domestic quarrel between two brothers may have escalated, leading to the murder of one of them. They also claim that, judging from where they found the body, the suspected killer could have kept the body in his house for at least 5 days before dragging it out. Many flocked the house where the dreadful incident allegedly occurred, with some scaling walls just to get a glimpse of where the decomposing body of the 17-year-old is claimed to have been locked. Some of the neighbors claimed that it was not the first time the two brothers were involved in a brawl.
Hata tumekuja na tumekuja hapa kuokoa mzee akipigwa.
It is suspected that a blunt object was used to bludgeon the deceased to death before his body was set on fire.
Tumeona tone la damu, tukafuata lile tone la damu mpaka likatuelekeza kwa boma hii. Wakati tumeingia kwa boma hii, tumeona kwa mlango moja damu nyingi sana, na pale officers wa askari wamekuja, wameamurisha tufuje ile nyumba, na tumeingia kweli, tumeona mahali mtu ameuawa.
The suspect is still at large. The area OCPD Charles Kotok said investigations have been launched into the incident.
Unfortunately, we go to yet another crime story. Two suspects have been arrested in Kitale in connection with the Naivasha murder, in which 5 people were killed in a robbery at a petrol station on Monday morning. Samuel Kimani Mwangi and Jafar Wambuge were arraigned in a Naivasha court charged with robbery. They denied the accusations of the violent act in which 1 million shillings was allegedly stolen. 2 more suspects were arrested in Naivasha today in connection with the murders, bringing the number of those in custody to 4. Naivasha CID boss Martin Bayer said the police obtained evidence that implicates the held suspects. A joint funeral service for the deceased is to be held in Nyandarua County this Saturday.
These are people we are following several rings on mobile phone call data, people whom we have communicated with the people we suspect. Therefore, they are coming in for questioning.